Also, factor is that the card's really ugly.
Oh my
It's a,
gosh.
it's an ugly Zach. It's an ugly card. All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 11 of the Next Gen TCG podcast. I am your co-host Tetra Ninja, and as always, looking very tropical, we have our second co-host, Gem Mint Pokemon, Zach Browning. Zach, what's with the shirt? What's with the shirt? People need to know.
Oh man, there's a lot of travel this week to the sunny parts of the United States, and so I want to wear a tropical shirt just to reinforce the vibe, the atmosphere. Just LA Collecticon, a little bit of Florida weather, maybe a little Texas too. Just getting all the heat in this warm weather.
I thought you were wearing the shirt because of in commemoration of the fact that 2024 Worlds was confirmed to be in Hawaii next year. That's why. That's what the vibe I thought you were going with. But I guess you are traveling a lot, so you're going to LA, Florida, and Texas Collecticon. Working obviously because you're full-time Pokemon. Gonna do any wheeling and dealing as well. I got some deals set up. But what's going on there?
Oh yeah, well the LA Collecticon was about a week and a half ago or so, and so we had a lot of Worlds promos, staff promos that we had a few booster boxes and stuff, and a bunch of CGC cards that you just kind of see, and really the LA Collecticon, there wasn't as much action as there was last year. Last year was extremely packed, hard to move around, just body to body. And this year, like there were a lot of sales, but like I think a lot of people expected it to be like record setting, just tons of deals, tons of people, this and that. And like it was definitely a good Collecticon, but it wasn't like the home run that I think a lot of people were expecting.
Okay, cool. So where in the world is Zach Browning? As usual, it's everywhere. But it is your job to travel around and buy collections and buy things and sell them at a premium. So let's get into market trends, which will actually be the bulk of this week's podcast, because usually we have a main topic, but there's just so much going on in the market. There's a lot of hot items coming up for sale at Heritage, at Golden, at PWCC. So we're going to be dedicating our time talking a lot about all the hot ticket items and just having fun along the way. This is first thing we want to talk about is something that happened a couple weeks before Worlds, and that is the sale of the One Ring. So it was pulled about a couple months ago, and then open offer of $2 million, and then eventually it actually was bought by by Post Malone for the staggering amount of 2.6 million US dollars. And we actually got the name finally of the actual person who pulled the card from Whitby, Ontario, Canada. His name is Brooke Trafton. Looks like he looks like a nice guy. Just became a millionaire overnight. Even after taxes, still going to be a millionaire. So big congratulations to him. So what did you think of the sale? I know we kind of had like a Discord back and forth of what we would do in terms of how we would approach it. You said immediately you would sell it right away, get it out of there, because the open offer is there, and just like even if there's like a bidding war, I think you said you would take it. Like if someone offered me 2.4, I just take it. I was in the other direction. I said I would just kind of like shadow store it for several years and then just kind of like let people stew on it. Like, where did it go? Where's the card? Who has it? And then like in like a decade later, just like, oh, here's the card. Okay, give me $10 million. But obviously my route, if you're to sell the card, you're losing in on hundreds of thousands of dollars in interest over that period of time. But I don't know. It's just, maybe I'm just like living in like a fantastical world where I just like to try to make the biggest like noise as much as possible. But yeah, what did you think of the sale?
You just want to mess with people. Do you know how many conspiracy?
I like messing with people a little bit. I do.
There'd be so many conspiracy theories out there if the card surfaced after 10 years. And you'd be like, guys, I have it. Like, don't worry. It's authentic. Trust me, guys. Trust me. This is mine. Everyone
Trust
would
me,
be,
bro. Trust
dude,
me.
No one would believe you, man. They'd be like, all right, this guy has been working on this for 10 years to get this ring right. And I just don't think anyone would believe it. But, first and foremost, congrats to Brooke. Like that's incredible. You know, we heard a lot of good stories about him before his name became public. You know, that it was an MTG player, down to earth guy. You know, really just loves the game. It's like exactly who you'd want to own it. And he's actually come out with some really good just kind of points. You know, after the sale, he said, you know, he's still going to work. He's going to, you know, set aside some money. He's going to put it to good use. You know, he's going to like do things the right way. He's not going to go buy a mansion or a business or, you know, this or that. He's literally just going to like just let it supplement his lifestyle, and he's going to live the same life. It's just going to be a little bit better. And it's like, dude, you know, at least you got a good head on your shoulders, know what you're going to do. And I just can't wait to see if what he does for the Canadian community he's in.
What did you think of the price? 2.6.
I mean, it's a pretty strong price. I mean, you know, some people had the $2 million offer, and, you know, we talked a little bit about, like, I kind of secretly thought someone who made the $2 million offer maybe pulled it, and they were just like driving the price up themselves. Like maybe they pulled it a week ago because they get the product early, and it's like they're just kind of inflating it to move. You know, I just think of all these conspiracy theories like we always do. But to get, you know, an extra 600K and, you know, off that 2 million, like I really don't think that price is going too much higher. I mean, there's the fat of the ring, there's the fat of the first 101. You know, it's crazy that Magic did that, but also to move it to Post Malone, you kind of get that celebrity sort of, you know, thing as well. And for anyone who's dealt with a celebrity in the hobby, most of them are kind of aggressive when it comes to like deal making, this and that. More times than not, I'm not saying every celebrity is this way, but more times than not, most of them will say, well, you have the opportunity to do a deal with me. The price should be lower. What's my deal price? Or, you know, no, but this is the, I'm going to use my own name here. This is the Jim Mint price. Like, come on, like get me even good. Like, you don't know how many times I hear like the price should be lower because this. It's like, dude, like I got to sell for fair market. Like, it's, I don't care who buys it, if it's, you know, this, that, or the other. But the fact that Brooke, it does seem like Post Malone did make the high offer. Like I don't have any other indication that there were higher offers than that out there. Like no one's come forward and said, oh, he went lower because Post Malone. It's like, you know, you got to meet Post Malone. He made a good offer, and he wasn't trying to abuse the celebrity to get a deal done, which I know many friends have taken discounts just to work with the celebrity. So maybe that's another topic for us to dive into at some point.
All right. So Post Malone, net worth, just Googled it really quickly, $45 million.
Oh
so,
oh my gosh.
We're talking about things, when we're talking about 101, we're talking about things that like literally there's nothing else. There's nothing else. This is your Paul Newman Daytona, $18 million Rolex. This is, I don't know what, just kind of an example.
This is your Tetra Ninja 101. No other copies out there.
This is your Apollo Omega professional moon watch. There should be two, but one got lost in the mail. Literally, there's supposed to be two. There were two of them that landed on the moon. One of them literally got lost in the mail, but the other one is in the Smithsonian right now. So you're owning something like literally once you have, no one else has, and no one else has the opportunity to buy unless you sell it. Post Malone's already in that position because he obviously has the one of those customized anniversary cards that was made for him and Katy Perry as well, for their help with the anniversary collection celebration of Pokemon. I like, honestly, you talk about like the celebrities being hyper aggressive, saying this is the celebrity price, this is what you should sell it for me. To me, I feel like you could just, if you really wanted, you could have squeezed them a little more. That's just, it's 1-to-1. There's no other way. There's no other cheaper option. There's one option, and I don't know. I don't know. I thought you could hold that a little more.
You maybe could, but I think he was excited to meet Post Malone. I think he was, you know, he's a fan, this and that, and like, you know, a lot of people idolize, you know, celebrities. They see them as their hero, this and that. And so I'm not saying every celebrity is like that way, but more often than not, you know, you'll encounter someone and they want to kind of use their status for, and I think a lot of people don't realize celebrities get so many free stuff all the time. Like when they go to like an event, I mean, you could probably talk to this a little bit. Like when you go to an event, the ticket's free, they get a free merch bag, free swag, they get all this free stuff. I mean, like Google like Academy Awards, like the gift basket they get. So it's like insane, like all the free stuff. And it's literally just for that celebrity to hold their brand. It's like so much free advertising. And so I think they're just maybe used to this. And I don't know too much about celebrity culture. I'm sure a lot of other people probably do, but I just, it's one of those weird deal insights that you wouldn't realize until you get in that situation. You're like, okay, this just feels a little weird. Like, why can't you just pay me market? Or, you know, it's like please just pay fair. Like, I want to work with you, but you know, this item goes for $100. Let's do $100. So it's a weird thing to deal with.
But it was nice to see how the story played out. And I don't think that card's ever going to leave Postpone's collection unless he goes to like some sort of bankruptcy sort of situation. So I'm pretty sure that card's going to be locked in for a long time.
Yeah.
But,
well, we talked about Pokemon making a custom Post Malone card. Like, what about Magic making a custom Post Malone card? You think that might be in the docket?
Maybe. He has to write a song for them. All right, let's get back to our hobby, which is Pokemon. Let's talk about some Pocket Monsters. So we had a number of sales that have happened recently with the last 2 weeks. A couple weeks ago, I posed you the question: where did all the Charizards go? At the $175,000 range, because there's quite a few of them on PWCC. Those kind of evaporated over a couple of weeks, and then we talked about like how you said like Charizard was like struggling to move at like 160 for a brief period of time there.
Yeah.
And then long and behold, like all the 160s to 175 Charizards kind of disappeared on the market. So we're kind of reaching that equilibrium again. We're still obviously not at that high at 400,000, which we hit basically during COVID, but we're kind of back in that middle ground at 240,000. So what do you think of where we're at with the Charizard market?
The Charizards are incredibly strong right now. No one kind of the what happened over COVID. Just there was kind of a brief period where the 150, 160 was struggling to move. And then there were a couple people recently that have tried to sell some PSA 10 Charizards that the market's kind of widely accepted as being not the strongest copies. And I think the sellers have acknowledged those as well too. And they were struggling to move around the 200 mark or so. And so seeing that kind of market activity out there to see a 240 sale, that basically says like, hey, there's someone out there that really wants it. And not only is there one person, there's two people. Because again, you got to keep in mind auctions take two. And we don't know how many underbidders there were that were maybe at 220 or 215 or 200 that didn't quite, get all the way up. And so I do, have a first edition base PSA 10 set available that I haven't really marketed too publicly, but privately to a few people interested. Just, they know what the price is. If they want to do a deal, great. But if not, it'll stay in my collection. And so I'm more familiar with kind of the Charizard activity and kind of the other set activity than probably most. But at this point, there are a couple people who are actively looking for Zards or looking for more Zards. And so, a lot of times when you have people enter the market, they're price sensitive, these things like, yes, they have the money. Yes, they could buy one copy or 10 copies, but they're not going to pay you 300K just because they have, 50 million in the bank or 3 million in the bank or however much it is. They still want to, pay fair, just because a card's a great investment, like you have to have a good buy-in price. You could buy a bad investment at a great buy-in price and it ends up playing out well. So you have to keep that in mind. But the 240, I think, is higher than I expected. I figured 225 would be strong. 240 is really strong. I think it may be tough to hit that 250 mark at some point. But if we continue to see Zards trend this way, like for us to see a 300K Zard by end of year, like would not surprise me. Because while we saw the public 240 price, there are more moving behind the scenes above 200. And that will continue.
I know that people, like when we talk about Zards, a lot of people who will like roll their eyes, just say, "Oh my god, they're talking about Charizards again." Like, let it breathe just a little bit. We don't need to constantly talk about Charizards all the time. But there's a reason for that, because I feel like the Charizard price is usually a good indication of where the hobby is at in general, the health of the hobby, because so many things are reflected from it. It pulls up the prices of all the other first edition base cards, even though those kind of have dropped within the last couple of months as well. But it's also a direct comparable to what a booster box costs. Those two have always been somewhat in line with each other. How much a Zard costs is usually what sealed first edition booster box is, without any of the possibilities of it being a fake booster box, which is, we've talked about before a couple of podcasts ago, that there's always inherent risks of buying a sealed copy. The only way, or sealed box, the only foolproof way is to be the only foolproof way to certify a box is to pull it out of another box, like the storage box, and open
Another box?
other box. Yeah, that's literally the only way you can confirm. But there are no like storage boxes right now of full of first edition base boxes. But yeah, so that's why we always talk about Charizards, because like I said, I feel like they're always a good litmus test of what the health of the hobby is all about. So
Yeah.
just talking about Zards in general, we're gonna bring it back to the CGC 10 price, because obviously the big changes at CGC 10. And we've actually had, so we're recording this on Tuesday night. So this podcast was recorded on the Tuesday, and there's such, like, overnight, there's been this huge volatile up and down of what the CGC 10 price was for the Charizard. So we saw a couple days ago the price and at 160K, which I was absolutely floored. I did not think we were going to reach anywhere near that level of price for that card in CGC 10. And then today, the price literally got chopped in half. We had one auction finish at 76,300. So what are your thoughts first on the price of the first one, 168, and then the basically plummet to 76,000 today?
I think it's crazy the different price movements you see, because you got to keep in mind this is the same grading company, CGC, same grade. So keep in mind CGC has a pristine grade, then it has a gem at 10 grade, then it has a 9.5 grade. You know, in the new black label, that sounds kind of weird, but their new black style of label, and so to see in the same grade is very peculiar. But because it was going for that 80-ish range or so before this 168K sale, which a lot of people did think was really strong. And we sort of beat the dead horse. Basically saying the PSA 9 is that 18K, the PSA 10 is at 200K. So there's got to be some wiggle room in the middle. And yes, these two sales, 168 and 76, are in the middle of that. But the disparity between the two of them being the same grade is absolutely nuts. So if you look a little closer at the 168K sale, it's actually a thick stamp Charizard with pretty good centering, and the eye appeal on that is pretty nice. I think it's actually a really strong card as far as like the eye appeal piece. And so if you look a little closer in the back, maybe someone thought that this has a shot for across a PSA 10, and which is a major gamble in my opinion.
That's a huge gamble.
Like, that's just absolutely nuts. And so I remember one of the things back in the day when we used to buy raw cards is like I would pay basically PSA 8 prices for raw, and then like if you got a 9, you made a little money. If you got an 8, you lost money. If you got a 10, you hit the jackpot and things are great. But you wouldn't hit that many 10s. It's kind of a risk. And then as sort of the hobby boomed, we hit COVID, this and that, like the raw card prices were trending more towards PSA 10 prices, like between the 9 and the 10. But like the raw card prices for mint cards was over a PSA 9. And so the premium people are willing to pay for like the chance to get a PSA 10 is like so close to PSA 10. It's like the risk that you take on is absurd. And so if this person bought this card, they're going to keep it like in the CGC 10 case, like that's a record price. And you got to keep in mind there's a decent bit of those out there. Like the CGC 10s are, PSA has 124 of them right now in PSA 10. I'm not sure how many CGC has, but like there's only one pristine, I think, as far as I'm aware. And then there's a handful of the CGC 10s. I don't know how many there are, but if you told me there's 20 or 30 or maybe there's 50, I don't know how many there are, but like that's just a big jump. So either the 76K looked really weak, and I think we certainly think the 168K was really strong. Do they get paid for? It wouldn't surprise me if neither got paid for, but it also, if they both got paid for, that'd be kind of crazy too.
It's such a difficult card to grade. Like when I entered the hobby, there were when I bought mine, there was 106 PSA 10 examples of Charizard,
Yeah.
and then as of right now, like you mentioned, there's 124. So from 2016 to 2023, like that's not many. That's not many more that have been graded. And the sad thing is, or like the reality is, there's a lot of people who are constantly cracking 9s and hoping to get that, like the upgrade to a 10, because the upgrade from a 9 to 10 is actually like a significant amount of cash and money if you're willing to take the risk of cracking it. A bunch of other cards finished as well. Big first edition base cards. We have Gyarados, Chansey, Slow King from Neo Genesis, Hitmonchan, which was the last card that I needed to finish first edition base in PSA 10.
Same here.
Yeah, it was such a hard one. It was, I think I ended up paying like 7 for that card.
I did a trade with PokeRev. I traded him a first ed base blister and then like cash or something. Like
Yeah.
it was a deal, something like that.
You haven't been in this hobby if you haven't done a deal with PokeRev at some point in your life. It's a rite of passage at some point. But anyways, those CGC 10 cards finished around between 3.5 to 3,000. So we're looking at probably, especially like the Chansey and the Hitmonchan, they're on like another level. They're basically on like kind of like Blastoise level, in between Blastoise and above Venusaur level in terms of pricing. Poor Venusaur, you know, poor Venusaur doesn't catch a break with the market, but yeah. So that price is I think it's accurate around the $3,000 mark for those cards.
Yeah, I mean the CGC 10, you want to see some sort of premium to PSA 9. Like absolutely, these should be over PSA 9. I think there's so many strong PSA 9 copies out there that just would not get the PSA 10. PSA has been extremely like strict with giving out 10s recently, and even like the vintage cards, like getting a 10 it's really tough. I've heard so many stories of people who are just sending a ton of cards and they're not hitting the same 10 rates they typically would. And keep in mind, like first ed base is the first English set printed. Like there were all kinds of issues with the cards. The centering like left to right. I mean, how many Shadowless arts do you see that are minty mint, and then the centering is just a little off left to right? And it's like that's a consistent flaw. And then a lot of those sets, one edge on most of the cards is like a little bit more rough than others. And so you could have clean quarters, clean edges, and like one edge just has like a slight rough cut where there's not like any whiting or anything. It just like the edge just isn't like as sharp as the others. And it's like, that's a very consistent feature. And so a lot of first ed base is just going to be difficult at those high grades. It's going to be easier to hit the CGC 10. Again, there's a higher, grade of CGC, the pristine, that it's going to be hard for a lot of those cards to hit. And so, like, absolutely go capture more value. That Chansey in CGC 10, I think you said it went for 3 or 4K. Like, that's a great price. That's a for paying $100-$150, however much CGC charges. That's a great little come up. Now, what does a PSA 10 Chansey go for? About 40K right now. Like, if there was one available on eBay at 40K, it wouldn't surprise me if it sold right away. Those buyers are out there and they've been looking, and I know a couple have moved here and there, but it's something that's just, if you need to complete a set, you need a Chansey, and like that's just the going rate.
Even our boy Quad Chansey does not have a first edition PSA 10 Chansey.
Don't tell him that, man. Oh my gosh, he's got all the Chanseys, but he doesn't have the big boy.
He does not have the big. Last time I checked, when I checked in with him a year ago, he did not have the big boy here, but he was also wasting his time buying a lot of modern. But anyway, so
no daddy Chanseys in that collection. Oh my gosh,
no. All right, so let's talk about Crash. Let's talk about the demise or the fall from grace of the infamous Battle Lily. You kind of mentioned it in the end of the last podcast. So the last known sale that you heard of for the Battle Lily was $60,000 US dollars, way down from what was the highest sale? 120? Around there? 120,000?
I think there were private offers 120. I've seen multiple deals over 100. I know other people have seen different 100K plus deals. But yeah, I mean, I think 120 was the highest like private offer I heard. So I don't know if those deals ended up happening or not. I think people trying to sell were holding out for more.
So can you kind of give me a history? Like, that was just like, was it difficult? Like people were just holding out for 60, or people are moving at 60? What's going on there?
Well, I mean, Battle Lily is an interesting story. It came out at an event. There weren't nearly as many handed out as I think that it could have been. And so, it has all the history, has a lot of good like factors. When you look at a card, Scott always used to say, the rarer the mentor, the better. And so, Lily kind of hits a lot of those different factors. So I get like why there's a squeeze there, because it does meet a lot of those metrics, and a lot of the other cards just don't when it comes like waifus and someone that's chasing those. So I think it's one of those instances where you have new market entrants, being a lot of the Chinese buyers that are buying aggressively some super high end cards. It seems like most of the ones being sold are being sold sort of in that pool. It seems like the end buyer seems to always kind of go back to there, whether or not that's the middleman or not. It's kind of a different story. And I think when you squeeze something like that, like it's not like there's 5 of those out there. Like there's a decent bit out there. And so when the money jumps up and becomes available, people will come out of the woodwork. There are cards that I love in my collection, like the Scream set. But if someone wants to pay me $20,000 for them, take it. Like there's some like the price just isn't sustainable. And if it is sustainable, like we talked earlier about the Charizard, first at base being like the baseline, kind of like the heartbeat. Like if the Charizard's this price, then everything else should kind of relate to the Zard. Well, I mean, you think about it, like if Battle Lily starts kind of like deviating from like the norm and the prices, like it's okay for a card to be priced super high. But what does that mean? All the other cards around it and all the other ancillary sort of pieces that should move with that card, are they moving or are they stagnant? Are they declining? So it's not saying like Battle Lily shouldn't be 100K, 120K, but if it is, what else should be like 20K? What else should be 50K? What else should, what other prices should exist for other cards that are comparable? And I think that's what people miss is they see the come up on this card, but they miss all the different opportunities that are like tangential to that. And that's really kind of the lesson here with the card. Don't always chase the hype. Just try to anticipate what may happen after. Like
I'm gonna be less diplomatic than you and say that it should not have been $100,000 card. Yeah, it should not be in the same level as Trophy Kang. It just shouldn't. I'm sorry for all you Wafu lovers out there, you thirsty boys out there. It's not $100,000 card. And if you talk to anyone who's been in this hobby long enough, everyone would have told you that price was nowhere near sustainable. But
it's crazy.
It's absolutely insane. So we also had the sale of another snap card. Sydney was like where are all the snap cards coming from? It just we went from like a period of time when I was like deep entrenched in the hobby where like you never saw a snap card. They rarely popped up. But now maybe just like the advent of like social media and then more Japanese buyers or Japanese owners being kind of like aware of the market value of cards as of right now. We're just seeing more and more snap cards pop up, ones that we've never seen before, such as the Magikarp that recently showed up. And then we also have the Snap Pikachu that just recently popped up again. But we had a sale of the Snap Gyarados in a pretty high PSA grade, PSA 9. Generally, those cards don't grade that high because much like the Trophy Pikas, awarded they are very often off-centered to come out with, so to get a 9 is basically to almost get a 10 in most cases. But we've discussed it many times because snap cards keep showing up. Like the baseline price for most snap cards is around that $50,000 mark, but so I was kind of thinking that this being a 9, I was actually expecting to see a little bit more of a premium than the final price of 58,000. What do you think?
I agree. I thought that was a fantastic deal for whoever won. I mean, I thought this easily could have been a 120K card. I think this card has had some pretty high sales in the past. Being Gyarados, I know a fellow friend, Shizzle B Timbers has a Snap Gary in his collection. He bought a long time ago. Then Max Mofo, I believe, has a Snap Gyarados, and he paid I think 50K 4 years ago. And so the 58K, I think it may be kind of a combination of not everyone is aware that it was available on Rare Candy. Again, anytime you have a new auction platform, like one of the biggest challenges is getting the audience, getting the bidders. And early on, earlier this year, they had a tremendous, Japanese presence, Japanese buyer pool, and they were getting great prices. But when you get to the higher prices, like you literally need like the 2 or 3 buyers that they're looking for to be online, ready to bid, ready to go. And that's really the big challenge there. So this price was phenomenal. And this Gyarados is actually less of a mystery as I think some of the other like high-end cards. This was from the Rare Candy big collection buy that happened a year or two ago. It was, a 7-figure deal where there was a very meticulous, Japanese collector who had like literally like one of the most complete collections that existed. He had, multiple snap cards, just basically at least a copy of every set that existed, like 10 sets of Shinings. Like it was one of the craziest collections ever. And part of the deal is they wanted to sell it to kind of a public figure, public facing person. So that would be in Leonhardt. And then that was used to kind of start like one of the bases of Rare Candy as far as just inventory that they have. So these snap cards have been strategically sort of listed over time. And, for the last couple months, they've had a coughing, they've had, what was the one before this, Articuno?
Yeah, and just for a direct comparable of like pricing. So the last Snap Gyarados that was sold publicly was the CGC 9.5. Obviously
through
becoming a
Heritage.
CGC 10. Yeah, through Heritage, that finished off at 87.5. So maybe that's kind of why this card finished a little bit lower than we thought it would be. Just because that price kind of like set the baseline at 87. You're getting a CGC 10, then maybe it's just slots a little bit lower at just shy of 60,000. Maybe that price killed the price of this auction.
Yeah, I mean, I still think I'm of the opinion like a PSA 9 of a snap card to me should fetch like higher than a CGC 9.5, because CGC literally has two different grading levels above that, and they're more flexible on some of the grading categories at some of the lower grades. There's more tolerance sort of the lower you go down. And like PSA 9, like they still have a pretty strict, centering tolerance there, and snap cards are just not well centered at all. And so some snap cards are much more well centered than others. But for this Gary, 9, basically that's an incredibly strong grade. Like, I mean, does a PSA 10 snap card exist? I'm not sure. There's certain cards that PSA 10 shouldn't exist. But again, it's one of those cards that's so rare that like your buyer pool that can actually pay the right price is probably pretty thin. There's probably a ton of people that pay for this card for 25K, but again, you're trying to get top of the market on this. Like once that one sale happened with Heritage, like how many more people are looking for a Snap Gyarados that are willing to pay that same price? And
Also, factor is that the card's really ugly.
oh my gosh,
it's an ugly Zach. It's an ugly card.
It's a Gyarados. It's a Gyarados.
You put the Neo Rev Gyarados beside this card, and you tell me which Gyarados is nicer.
Neo Rev, of course, but this is like a core snap. The story,
you're paying for rarity at this point.
You're paying for history. You're paying for nostalgia. You're paying for museum.
I know. I don't know. I like to buy cards that I like to look at. Like we said at the very beginning of the podcast, there's a lot of really high-end stuff coming in the next few weeks. So we have Trophy Pikas coming in at Golden, and then we have Illustrators coming in at Heritage. You're seeing a ton of movement on some really high-end items. So let's let you take this away. Let's start off with Golden.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like there's so many just high-end items popping up. And again, some of that's part of what time of the year we're in, that August, September, October, November timeframe. Like you're going to see the big boys come out. You're going to see the big dogs. Like someone who want to sell a card in March, they may be holding out for this time of the year. This has just always been a stronger performance time for the hobby. Typically, August is going to be the best time for sports cards. It's like where a lot of them peak, kind of just on anticipation of the season. And then for Pokemon, it's traditionally been like late October and sometimes November. But I've seen that like timeline creep up more. So I've seen it happen more in October than November lately. And then occasionally you'll see some strong December sales. But I think a lot of people are burnt out because Christmas, the holidays. And honestly, also depends on like what tier of cards you're looking at. So like an Illustrator coming up for sale, it's not, you could list that any time of the year. That buyer is usually going to be ready. But when you get down to sort of the mid-tier and kind of semi-high-end stuff, like timing the market a little bit, I think does play a little bit of a factor as well. I think cards tend to go up a little bit around Worlds. I think that's a decent time to buy. Then after Worlds, I thought we saw a little bit more of a flat line. I thought it kind of died off a little bit faster than I thought. It seemed like the market was pretty weak. But for Golden specifically, they just have an incredible amount of cards, being auctioned on this Wednesday. And so they have some of the Cosmos Holofoil base set cards, which a lot of people know that, Wizards of the Coast did Galaxy Holofoil pattern for base Fossil Jungle. And then on base set 2, they actually switched over to Cosmos Holofoil, which is kind of like the circles and such. And so we're aware of the Cosmos fossils that exist. But basically a few copies of base set from 1999 Surface, where it's a Cosmos Holo, kind of a test print that shouldn't exist. I've had a few people tell me like, oh no, that's base set too. And it's like, well, the copyright date at the bottom is different. So it's actually one of those kind of weird print runs. And then it's similar to that, you have the disco holofoils, which I don't know who came up with the term disco, but the crazy part about those, they're like a shadowless sort of back. And all these have square cut corners, and they have a few of those up for sale too. And so they're cards that were never released, sort of officially or like cut in the factory. They're cards that really like Pokemon, like they could have gone with like a Disco Hollow foil, like going forward. Like imagine like Team Rocket with Disco Hollows, or like they ended up going with Cosmos, but those two sets of cards like were never like officially released by Pokemon with curved corners, this and that. So to see them available, it's kind of a way for people that they can actually collect them and add them to their collection, and just have a different variant of the card. But I think everyone knows that they're not like official. They're from WotC. Like the sheets came out, they're test prints. They are by all means like some of the rarest sort of versions because they shouldn't exist publicly. And so for those obscure kind of crazy collectors that want like a little bit of everything, I include myself in that pool. Getting a copy, that's kind of cool to see those come up for sale. Any thoughts on test print stuff? Do you have any desire to own that stuff?
No.
No, not at all.
No. I like to be honest, I like official releases, even though I own a couple of match print cards just because
That's a test print.
I just bought them because they were like dirt cheap. To be honest with you, they're like dirt cheap, and I bought them for like $150. But like, I'm not gonna pay thousands upon thousands of dollars for like these test print cards. I like official releases personally myself of the things that I collect. But we like you mentioned all the Cosmo and Disco Hollows that Golden has going on. They also have the number 2 and number 3 trophy Pikas, and the one thing that you rarely see is a trophy Pika in a PSA 10 case, because generally those cards are very off-centered. And so last time we checked, that card was sitting at 444,000 with buyer's premium. What do you think that this finishes at?
It literally could be anything. I mean, I think the 444 is a very, very strong price. Yes, it's a PSA 10. When you look at it, the color does not pop the same way as other trophies, do from that era. Like it does look a little faded. It doesn't look as faded as some of the trophies we've seen, but it doesn't look like a pristine, like full color sitting in the closet all these years. It looks like it was absolutely in the case on display for a long time. And yes, the centering looks great. The back looks great. Like it, by some of those metrics, it does hit the PSA 10, thing. But I also I have gray stamp cards that have gotten PSA 10 for first ed base. So sometimes like that factor isn't like is I feel like it doesn't come into play all the time with PSA. It's kind of like more selective. So I do kind of have that in the back of my head when I see the PSA 10 grade. It's like, it's not like the bold, color that sticks out, but I mean, if I'm going to make a guess, and let's make the assumption there's going to be at least one more bid on this, I could see this going for 600, probably top, because it's PSA 10, it's number 2 Pika. It's not a 97, which I think holds it back a little bit, but 444 is already above where I think it could be. But seeing this kind of competitive bid activity before the auction ends, I don't see it going above the 6 piece. I know there's a lot of people out there with a ton of money that want to get the best, and they're literally people like in Dubai that want the best of the best, and they will pay whatever it takes. So if this card hits for 2 million, that would be crazy, but it would literally just be people saying, I want it, you can't have it. Like that's what that price would mean.
Stepping down, we have number 3 Pika, which a lot would argue is probably the best Pika artwork.
Absolutely, of course.
It's absolutely adorable, sitting at 192,000. Obviously not the high grade of a PSA 10. But what do you think? Where do we finish at?
I think it's a very fair price for that card. Like I think if you're selling it, you got to be very happy. Again, I think it's one of the most adorable, because is that a PSA 8 or PSA 9? Do you remember?
It's an 8, I think.
Yeah, I think the 8 hurts it a little bit. I mean, even just getting that card an 8 or 9 is tough, because the challenge of that is there are higher graded copies out there. And so like you are basically saying there are other copies that should be worth more when you bid on this. It would be really tough for me to see this go past 250. Like I think 250 is probably the cap on this. I think the person selling it should be very happy with 192. These are two very strong prices on these cards. Now, go ahead.
The centering on it is shockingly bad. So the centering just kind of like hits you in the face of how bad it is. So it's, yeah.
Do you remember the comment you made to me? It's like, oh, that centering's so bad, that card must be mint. And I was like, yeah, it probably is, man.
Yeah, when I saw, I was like, that centering's so bad. How is it an 8? That card must be like the most flawless card on the surface, but it's just the centering is just so bad.
Maybe it helps it. Maybe that's a CGC 9.5. Who knows?
Maybe.
I mean, they got a greater
I
tolerance for centering at the 9.5 grade.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, like you said, I think I agree that the buyer the seller right now should be very. You're probably getting another bump last minute, so I
Yeah.
could see it finish off at like 220 ish.
So what about this killer deal that we have to talk about right now? I mean, I don't know the current price. Maybe we should check that. But when we wrote these numbers out like a few hours ago, like literally, like this would be the steal of the year if this price happened. The Illustrator 7.5. Can you believe that's under 100 grand right now?
It's not gonna. It's not gonna say. It's not gonna say. I don't know. It's not 100 grand. I think like from my understanding, there are people who are very invested in the Illustrator price. So even if they have to spend a little bit of money just to maintain that price, I think you'll have a group of buyers who will keep it around at least. I think at least 500,000. What do you think?
Man, at 7.5, there's so many just like 8s and 9s, and there's a handful of CGC 10s, and there's only one PSA 10, but it's like it's just a bottom grade for the card. So like I think there is a lower grade as well too, but I mean it should go for 300 to 400 at least. But like there's so many other copies that are just stronger that like and then I have some experience with trying to hold bottom prices on things over the years. And a lot of times when I try to hold a price, I regret it, because I think sometimes you realize that the guy selling one copy has 10 more he's waiting on you to buy. And so trying to hold a bottom on a card, I think, is not necessarily the best move. And it just eats in your liquidity and makes it more difficult to buy the things you actually want. So rather than caring about the final price on something, like just let the market be the market. And then that way you can act sort of fairly and in the right state of mind and soundly, going forward, rather than trying to manipulate it. Anytime you manipulate the market's just going to win. Like unless you're just that like well capitalized, the market will prevail.
We say that, but Burning Shadows Charizard is still $2,000.
Right? The market's prevailing, man. The market is saying,
Is it the market that's saying, or is it some stores are saying this is going to be the price for this card?
So sometimes like when you die, like I've always thought like what if you could ask like one question or something and just get like the truth, just be like, all right, like I've got to know what happened. And like the guy at the pearly gates was like, okay, like this is what happened. And it's like it was this dude in Iowa, and he was just buying every one of them for years, and he like spent 50 million on Burning Shadows Charizards, and like that's the only reason. But some of that stuff just leaks out because the people selling it, like they just see the name pop up or they see the business. And there are people with like 5 eBay accounts, and like it just eventually you figure all that stuff out just from talking to people in the hobby, this and that. So I don't know. It'd be fun to figure out why some of these things are the way they are, but we can only speculate until time tells.
We need to hire Mason to get on this case, and he will figure it out for us. All right, so
he's good.
He's good. So that's golden. Let's move on to Heritage Auctions. So they also have their own Illustrator, but this one is a CGC 10.
It's a big boy, man.
A big, thick boy. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, and we've talked about, I think a lot of us think CGC 10s are better than PSA 9s. I think they're stronger cards overall. So to see like basically an Illustrator 10 pop up it should be a record setting price. It should be something that just crushes it. I think a lot of times when you look at a card, you really just want to evaluate the card itself, over the grade. But this card is well centered. It looks extremely nice, and they basically have a CGC 10 only auction where the whole auction block coming up is literally just CGC 10s. And there are a couple pristines mixed in, which is interesting, but all of the big cards, Shadowless Tenzard, no rarity Charizard, almost a full first edition base set, no stage Blastoise, and of course, like my absolute favorite, no simple Jolteon's in there, El Caesar, T17s. It's literally like Heritage just said, what are the biggest cards in Pokemon for vintage? Let's get them in one of the highest grades and let's auction them and just see how the market reacts. So if you want a true test for how does the market perceive CGC 10s and how do they value them compared to PSA 9s or PSA 10s, or this auction block will tell like that for every card across the board. So if Lugia comes in at 30K, And then, T17's 15K, like that's going to tell a story. If Lugia is 30K and T17's 40K, that's going to tell a story. And so again, we talked earlier about the Zard being like the litmus test and kind of the balance, between everything. And so you're literally going to see all these big cards balance between themselves, and you're going to be able to see kind of, if the Shadow Zard 10 goes for 70K, like that's a crazy strong price to PSA 10. But if it goes for 40, then that tells another story. So I'm so curious to see how this plays out. And then the Illustrator 10, like that's going to be the, does it break a million? If it breaks a million, does it break 2 million? And so but you got the Heritage, you got the Golden Illustrator out before, but it's kind of like a weak grade compared to kind of what I'd consider to be one of the top grades of the card that's out there.
So obviously we don't have access to the Logan Paul PSA 10, but you personally have seen the CGC 10.
Yeah.
Based on your understanding, you could safely probably say that the CGC 10 is probably a stronger grade, because it's a well-known fact that the Logan Paul PSA 10 Illustrator was regraded multiple times by the owner to hit that 10 grade. So take that for what it's worth, of what you will. If you're a person who's a purist on grades and saying it's a regraded 10, or if you're a person who just says there's a 10 on the case, it is a 10. But I know that the self-evaluation of Logan Paul for his PSA 10 was, I think he said he thought of 3.4. He evaluated it at 3.4 million because he obviously did a trade of a 9, which was evaluated at 1.4, 1.5.
Well, I think 1.2.
1.2. So question is, how much is the premium? Do you think that there's enough knowledge in the hobby that most people will understand that the CGC 10 version is, in most likelihood, a stronger example than the Logan Paul PSA 10? Or does that just being in a PSA 10 case just kind of like overrides everything?
I mean, it's crazy because the Logan Paul one was regraded 4 or 5 times. It's not the strongest 10. It's a 9 for sure, but it's not the strongest PSA 10 that's out there. I know someone who has owned the PSA 10 at one point or another, and they've also held the Illustrator 10 that's at the Heritage auction. I've held that card in person at CGC. I've also seen that card again at the National this past year at the Heritage booth. And this person that actually owned, the PSA 10 Illustrator at Logan Paulins at one point and has held the CGC 10, basically free and clear said, hey, the CGC 10 is a stronger copy than the Logan Paul PSA 10. And so I think I think there was some sort of conversation to see if, we could use that person's name, or if they would be willing to put it in the ad or the advertising. Because I did talk to Heritage a little bit about it, try to get the story. And I think lo and behold, I think out of respect for the PSA 10, they did not want to publicly make that comment. But it was one of the probably 5 owners of the PSA 10. So if you know all the owners, great. But I know a few of them are very private, so it might be hard to figure out who it is. But I can basically personally confirm that person's opinion, that they think that the CGC 10 that's at Auction Heritage right now is a stronger copy of the Illustrator. I mean, it's extremely well centered, which is hard for the card anyway. And then it's a really nice looking card. I do think that the buyer of this card, this might be contrary to popular opinion in the Pokemon community, I do think that the buyer of this card is not a Pokemon collector. I think it's a Grail collector from another hobby. You'd be very surprised how many like high-end super rare Pokemon cards are not owned by like 100% collectors from Pokemon. They're a sports card collector, it's a Magic collector, or it's a fine art collector, it's a stamp collector. Like stamps are a pretty big hobby out there. And so I do think that the end buyer of this, that final bidder, I think that they're going to be someone from another hobby that just wants to get the best of the best, and the Pokemon hobby just to add to their collection. So any thoughts on that point?
Yeah, we call those people cross collectors. Like they're not necessarily invested in Pokemon. They're just invested in owning the best of the best. Like for some reason, if 149 Mont Blanc ever decided to sell his number 1 PSA 10 Trophy Pika, which is literally the only PSA 10 example of that card, to my knowledge. Maybe you know something else. You like once again, you'll have the exact same situation, where you're not the person who ends up owning that card. Maybe probably isn't going to be in the hobby. It's probably just going to be a super rich person who has more money than the rest of us. Just say, I'm going to own that card because I own the best of the absolute best. But yeah, it's lots of cool stuff coming up in the hobby. So once all these auctions finish, we'll definitely we'll have an audit of what we think. Did you? Oh, we never gave a final price. What do you think the CGC10 Illustrator finishes at?
Man, this is a really tough one, and I've actually talked to a lot of people about the different prices and such. I think if someone not in the hobby buys it, I think there's two bidders at 1.5. I think that the cap, again, we talked earlier about one of the cards shooting up the number 2 PSA 10, maybe hitting 600 or so, or even going higher. It's literally it's people just saying, hey, I really want this. It's the only one that's ever been available for sale in the new CGC 10 label. It would not surprise. I mean, it would surprise me, but it would still it wouldn't buffoon me if it hit like 2.5. I think 3 is probably the cap. I know we talked about Logan Paul's being valued around 3.4. So kind of in today's terms, again, the 9 that he got was around 1.2. I think a PSA 9 is probably around 900 right now. And then if you take that and basically say we think the CGC 10 is better than the PSA 9, I think there's some sort of premium there. So I think the 1.5 is what hits. But does it actually drive up higher than that? It's gonna be tough to tell. So we'll see. What do you think is going to end?
My guess 1.75.
1.75. Okay.
1.75. That's
so you're in that range.
I'm in that range.
Do you hate it when I give like a range? You're like, hey, what do you think it's going to end at? And it's like I give her like $1 million range. It's like
you can't give a range and the price is right, Zach. So I'm not gonna let you give a range here.
Just got to bid low and then just hope no one bids above you. So you cap me off that 1.75.
R.I.P. Mr. Bob Barker.
Yeah, man, sad story.
Dude, he was like 99 years old. That's not a sad story. He lived a good life.
But the price. He always got the price right, though, man. If we had him, he could just tell us what all these prices are.
Cashed in his chips at 99. That is not a bad age. I would sign off on 99 any day of the week.
Yeah.
Well, if you were to here's a question I always pose to people: what age would you sign off on? Like if you met someone who said, "I will guarantee you an age that you can live to perfectly healthy, no cancer, no diseases."
Yeah.
What age would you sign off on?
Am I getting weaker over the years? My bones frail. Can I still walk around and run and all that?
You're perfectly healthy.
Perfectly healthy?
Yeah.
Oh man, I think I'd probably do 102.
Okay, that's not a reasonable number.
Well, if I'm healthy and I can do everything I want to do, if I think knowing everything I know now, and I'm a big dude, so big dudes don't live to be 100, and I could pick an age, I'd probably pick I think I'd pick 76 or 78. I think I'd be pretty happy with that, because I do think there's a chance that 55 or 60 or 65, you know what I mean? Gary's in his 70s, that's awesome. He's crushing it. He's still moving around, fun, loose, ready to go. He's doing great. And it's if I can, be as limber as that at 70, I think I'd be pretty happy. But I mean, I think I'd be happy at 76. What about you?
When I was in my 20s, I said I would sign off on a perfectly healthy 75. But now
it's young.
But now I'm in my 30s now. I think I would bump that up to, I would sign off on a perfectly healthy 80.
80?
80.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm healthy as can be, why not be 102? Get an extra 20 years.
Because you have to give and take for the fact that you're guaranteeing good health. It's you can't have it all.
I mean, right? if you're guaranteeing good health, I'm going to take advantage of it. I mean, why not pick 125?
No, that's not how it works, Zach. You have to give up years to ensure that you're going to be healthy. So there's another conversation that what's your last meal? You go into the chair. What is your last meal?
Man, you're gonna learn a lot about me here. I've got a few go-to meals I really like that are nostalgic. They're from when I was a kid. When I grew up, I didn't necessarily have, at least in my very young years, like 1 through 9, it was all the cool stuff came from Grandma. So going to Taco Bell, going to Fazoli's, that was Grandma. Like that was visiting her on the weekends. And unfortunately, she passed in 03. But the last meal I pick would probably be a Fazoli's fettuccine Alfredo. So it's an Italian place. They have unlimited breadsticks. The breadsticks are just garlicked up as can be. And so, they used to have shrimp in there. They don't do that anymore. And so I'd literally eat a fettuccine Alfredo. I'd eat like 6 breadsticks. I'd eat all the garlic I can. And 5 minutes after that, I'd feel awful. But like, let's just do it real quick.
You just have like the garlic seeping through your pores.
Oh, that would be why I died. That would be the heart attack. Like that's why the death happens. Yeah. What about you?
Oh, I'm a steak and potatoes guy.
Steak and potatoes.
So I do steak and potatoes with a little bit of lobster. My favorite go-to steak place is Morton's. I would have to say, love their garlic mash. I'm not I don't need to have like Wagyu or anything. Just like a nice fillet from Morton's, a nice side of lobster. Dessert. I love. My all-time favorite dessert is the Billy Miner pie from the keg. You ever had that?
No, I haven't.
No, it's coffee. It's an ice cream cake, coffee flavored ice cream cake with like a base crumb with chocolate and caramel drizzle with sliced almonds on it. Like it is literally all the best things in the entire world. Is there ever come to Canada? I'll take you to the keg and we'll have a Billy Miner pie, and you'll experience the best dessert that has ever been conceived by a restaurant. Okay, anyways, we're probably making the viewers very hungry. Let's move on to Collector's Corner. So I brought the card. The Collector's Corner, if anyone is unaware, first time watching the podcast, Zach and I bring a card from our personal collection to share with the viewers. And this card that I brought this week is the one that I was trying to bring last week, but I just couldn't make it out in time. So in commemoration of Zach being coming back from the home of the rising sun, the origin country of Pokemon, I decided to bring a trophy card.
Oh my gosh.
This is the 2010 Masters Key. So this was a card that was only awarded in Japan to the Japanese competitors who would have to play this tournament in order to qualify for Worlds. It is often paired with the Master's Scroll, which was also another prize card for that year. So most people, at first glance, you don't think that there's a Pokemon on this card, but if you look very closely, you'll see a Celebi floating in the background of this card. So I bought this card from our friend Trade Natural.
So is it a friend? You got to remember the friend now. Like you can't forget the friend.
I was in between calling him the Fine Card and Trade Natural and his actual name,
Chuck.
So I was kind of like slipping. What am I gonna call this guy? He has so many aliases now. Chuck runs the Instagram account, the Fine Card. We obviously use his. We use his graphics all the time on our podcast because he does an amazing job of creating them and keeping the community up to date with the prices of everything. Memory, I think $14,000 was the purchase price of this card. So I think this was I've said it before, this was the most expensive card that I have ever purchased in my entire time in the hobby. So it's an amazing card. It looks great. It looks fantastic and awesome.
Was it easy to make that decision to buy your most expensive card ever? Like, do you want to walk through that like real quick?
No. I was pretty heavily leveraged on that card. So I was doing a PayPal payment plan of $4,000 over several months. So I wanted to maintain liquidity in order to continue buying other things as well in the hobby. So just straight up spending $14,000 in a single month was not an option unless I was willing to sell some other cards or offer some other cards as trade value. But no, it wasn't a big deal. It's a trophy card. So and it's fantastic. And I have never I've seen, I think a BGS 9.5 sold within the last year, but I have never seen a PSA 10 come to market in an auction form. So it's probably one of those cards that's best suited to be sold in a private deal if it's ever going to be sold. But you can't beat rarity, right?
What's the pop on it?
Okay, let me look
Now you
this
gotta
up.
look. Okay,
Now I
here
gotta look.
while you're looking, here's another question for you. How
Okay,
long was that card a goal of yours before you actually pulled the trigger to buy it?
not long.
Like you were like, oh, that card looks cool. It's 14K. Okay, okay. I'm
No,
Tetra
wasn't long.
Ninja. Just
Top
giving you a
10.
hard time. Oh wow, that's actually higher than I thought it'd be. Wow, because
Yeah,
there's not that many copies of it. But
I think 26 or 36.
yeah, again, Japanese cards are extremely well made. They're except for snap cards, of course. But outside snap cards, it's like they all they're all really nice. And I guess if you think of the manner this was awarded, like at a trophy, like at an event, it being a trophy, like people would probably preserve and protect this card more versus like getting like 20 Charmanders like at the same time or something. So that's interesting.
All right, what you got for me?
So
What you got?
my card of the week, if you know the trend and what I like to collect mistakes and mishaps and errors that just need to be loved, just more and more. I have a Lugia first edition PSA 10. I'm sorry, first edition CDC 7.
I'm looking at that. That's a 7, Zach.
I know. I say 10 so much. It's like I gotta remember like
okay.
sevens exist.
That's slight flex. I say
Yeah.
10 so often.
And so this one is off center, top to bottom. And I think there's a little print dot on the bottom down there, but you can just see it's a really nice looking Lugia. I think I have one of these with a swirl. If this one doesn't have a swirl that pops. But again, getting like a first edition like Neo card that's off center. I've actually seen more of them pop up in the last like 18 months than I typically see. And anytime that stuff's up, it's like you just gotta go for it. I think first edition off center Watsy's like for a holofoil is like I'm willing to pay up for it. I think a lot of people try to get premiums on like rares and non-holos, and like, you see some crazy off center stuff. But like I'm at the point now that I don't even think that stuff's worth $100 like per card because there's so much of it that like I see some of it I pass on in like 50 or so. And I think once you just see the market cycle, it's like you just gotta figure out like what's actually rare and like what's like doesn't pop up. So like this Lugia pops up, let's say like a 7, goes for like 300. Like I would have like snap bought this at 600 or 700 or something like that. So I'm not really sure what I paid for this. This has been in my collection for a number of years, but it's just like how many like off center Lugas you see like that. You'll see some stuff that's slightly off center, like an 8 or so, but like a true just like, hey man, this center is messed up. Like it's hard to find. But I do have a card that I'll show at some point in the future that's another off center Neo Genesis card. That's actually my favorite off center Neo Genesis card. And
The tease.
it's just
the tease.
it's tucked
Gotta
away.
keep watching. You gotta keep watching the Next Gen TCG podcast. You'll never know when this card will actually show up.
Some episode over the next year. I'll commit to that.
All right, so let's move into the final segment of the podcast, which is Ask a Nick and Zach, our viewer question segment that we pull either from the comments of this video, or you can reach out to us on Instagram, slide into our DMs and send us a message at NextGen_TCG on Instagram. So we have some recurring people, which we love. We love our recurring viewers. So coming from Mr. Qatar Freak, how do you each decide what cards to let go of in your collection and what cards to sell? So I'm gonna go first because I literally just started selling cards this year. My answer is simple. Everything that I have sold thus far has just been duplicates of cards that I have owned over the past few years. Cards that I purchased just because I didn't think that the price of them, they were just generally undervalued. So that's a pretty easy decision to sell something when you have multiple copies of it. I'd like to get Zach's opinion though. Like, Zach, have you ever sold something that kind of took away from your collection, that kind of like detracted from it?
I've done it twice for cards that I would consider to be permanent parts of the collection that I've sold, and both times were just insanely aggressive offers for the time, but they were also cards I think I could replace at some point. And that's it's in Mr. Guitar Freak. This is kind of the tough question. It's like, what do you sell for your collections and things you don't want to sell? Well, I think everyone has their collection. Everyone has cards that they also own that's not their collection, like their inventory, this and that. And that stuff's easier to sell. And there is like some timing stuff with the inventory. Like, some cards are better to hold 2 years. Some cards are better to sell right away. Some cards, so I think it's a different conversation how to sell inventory. But if you're just talking about your collection, cards you want to keep and sell, this and that, the easy answer for me is if you have like a defined scope and you know what your goals are, you know what you're collecting, if there's something that you want more, and I think this probably applies for most people, this scenario, like if there's something you want to collect more that's more desirable, that you think you get more pleasure out of, and I'm finding more and more that a lot of collectors like to own something for a period of time and then move on to something else, and that's okay. Maybe you call like me a purist or whatever term you want to use, but I like to, when I have my collection, I never want to sell. Like I just want it to be there forever. And like, that's a goal. I have a goal. And, to me, it takes away from the goal if I sell something. So I don't like selling things that are technically a part of the collection, but there's a lot of people that their collection in 2023 is different than their collection in 2022 or different than their collection in 2021. It was still the journey to get there. Like the journey is the best part of any collection. Actually owning something, achieving it, is, I think, way less fun than actually trying to work towards it or complete a set or complete a goal. And so I think the right move is when there's something that you want more, if you're going to swap something out, or if you aren't swapping something out, you just have something you want to sell. Sometimes the right time may be like you just don't value it as much as the market values it. And, everyone has different financial and family situations. And, I talked earlier, like I love this Scream set. I think it's awesome. But if someone was to pay me $20,000 for a set that just like is out there so much and I could do so many other things for 20K, like take it. Like it's cool to me at like 5K for the set. But when it hits that 10K mark, I'm like, okay, this is overvalued, but like I'll still hold on to it for that. But if someone wants to just do 20K for a Scream set, which that's not the price right now, but it could have been recently, it's like, okay, it's time to sell. And so think about it in those sort of two sort of components, like when the market way overvalues something and it just doesn't feel right to keep or have home, or if there's something that you actually want more. I think sometimes I'm actually accepting that more. I think it's a better way to rotate out of things. And so just hopefully that helps answer your question.
I think like a good example of this is when there was that race to complete the gold star
Oh yeah.
set. So like you had like a handful, like what, like 4 or 5 people just like competing to be the first one in the world to complete the gold star set. But what happened? Like what happened after someone completed it, Zach?
They put it up for sale. It was available right away.
Yeah, it was fun. So sometimes you just have that chase, right? Where people want to be, I want to be the first one to do this. I want to be the first one to have this. And once you get that, clout still existed, even though social media was not nearly as prevalent back then when people were trying to chase that gold star set. It was still a thing. And obviously the person who completed it, they got their minute. Who was the first one to complete it, by the way? Give them a quick shout out.
I remember it was an Espeon. It was Pop One. The guy that graded it, it was SNG Quest. I remember watching his YouTube videos, and he sold it for like a crazy price compared to all the other gold stars. I know Hisoka completed one of the sets, but I don't think Hisoka was the first person. Man, it's a name I haven't heard in a while. But
see, that tells you how much chasing clout gets you. Like you're already forgotten.
Like the username may have changed at some point, but I remember the chase. And I remember the guy who got it, and it was crazy because everyone's like, I can't believe this happened. Like because the Espeon was Pop Zero, and like that was the most desirable card because no one had it and everyone wanted to get it in a Pop One. And with the first guy that got a PSA 10 of it, like Pop 5 packs were still expensive. Like yeah, they were cheaper back then, but relative to other packs, they were very expensive packs to open compared to everything else. And so when that Espeon graded 10, it's like you have the only one. Like there were other Ray 10s. Like yes, Ray's really valuable, Torchic's valuable, but like when every gold star is like Pop 3 or 4, like the Torchic being Pop 2 doesn't really matter. You know what I mean? It's like every card's like low pop. And so the Torchic getting valuable didn't really happen until like a little bit later. But the Espeon, that was like I remember I know it was a big price. I just can't remember how big of a price it was. But I think the guy had Gold Star in his name. It was like Gold Star Collector, Gold Star. It was some guy that literally had like Gold Star in his name.
Yeah.
Do you remember
So
his name? Do you remember it all? Or
no idea. This
yeah.
is that's what I'm saying. Like chasing the cloud, and then several years later, people don't remember you. So just buy what you like.
Mm-hmm.
Buy what you like, keep what you like, and sell what you don't like. All
Oh
right.
yeah.
So moving on to next question, Mr. Steven Kassoon. Is there anything criminally underrated to you guys right now? You can go first.
So you're asking us what to buy? Do you want like the secret sauce? Like what do we think is super low? I think to answer your question, it's are you looking at like immediate horizon, like quick flip horizon? You're looking at like a 6 month, 1 year, 3 year, 5 year? Because I think the answer for like a 5 year, like criminally underrated, is different than like a 1 year. I think it's different for like a right now. I think there's the criminally underrated things right now is like the arbitrage between different like companies like Heritage, Golden. I think there's a ton of stuff like lower end stuff on Golden that's going so low. You know, I told you guys for years, like the play was like, hey, you buy from this company, you sit at that company, you just auction it and you just get more. It literally like that happens. And so like I think like that's an easy play if you're looking for easy plays. Criminally underrated. I think WotC's criminally underrated compared to modern. Like I know we keep coming back to the Charizard being the lifeblood of things, but like I think Moonbreon's like a lifeblood card. I think that there's other like modern. You know, you talk about Burning Shadows Charizard. I don't know if that's I consider that to be one of them, but there's like kind of key cards and sets that are like kind of dictate kind of the price for all the other cards in the set. And so another way to look at it is, you know, mid 2020s, you know, WotC was crushing it. And a lot of the Japanese stuff was really low. A lot of the trophies, a lot of the, you know, big cards. I know that some of the you know, number 1 trophies, number 2 trophies were just breaking 10K. And it's like, well, why were those cards so low when everything else was so much higher? And a lot of stuff's kind of flatlined, like WotC, it's even like gone down. And like that other stuff, like Japanese stuff, just skyrocketed. And so if you look at today's market, like what has the opportunity to kind of do what Japanese did in 2020, to do what in 2021? And it's a really interesting question because whatever that answer is going to be contrary to popular opinion. It's going to be something that the market isn't respecting right now. And so you got to spend more time on it. I think it's probably like an SM Pratt Patreon question, maybe, but I generally answer, I think WotC is pretty low. Some of the sets coming out, like Pokemon 151 in Japanese, and I thought Celebrations ETBs from the Pokemon Center were pretty good last year. So I think those are probably pretty good holds.
I'm gonna say once again, Zach is correct. We've talked about it before. WotC is pretty low, but another example I'm gonna give is old back Japanese promos. I think are as of right now criminally undervalued, especially if you take in comparison to like contrast like the prices that people are paying now for like Poncha Pikachu's, Mario Pikachu's floating around between the 5 and the 10,000. You have like Fan Club EVs, Magikarps floating around that price. Just as like a direct comparable, it doesn't make sense. The Fan Club stuff has been around much longer, much more difficult to obtain, much more difficult to grade. So literally, like if you open like a Mario Pika pack, if you don't get a 10, there's something wrong. If you don't get a Mario Pika 10 straight out of a box, then you did something wrong, or you're just like the unluckiest person in the world, because that print quality is just like almost absolutely bulletproof. So old back Japanese promos, I think, are currently criminally underrated. I'm not going to go too far into it because I would like to actually maybe purchase a couple more of them, but that's my underrated section that I can contribute.
Can add to that a little bit,
Yeah.
you know, I bought a Pop 2, you know, I want to say Fan Club because you just said Fan Club, but it's like, you know, one of the fan something Mewtwo's from like 97, 98, something like that. It's like a special release type thing. And I think I paid like 2K, I think, for it, maybe 2.2 or something. This was like earlier this year, maybe like late last year. This was like a while back. But like when I saw it was Pop 2, and it's actually a card I had on my list that I just came across, and it was just a seller that I deal with all the time. I see all the time, and he popped it up. I was like, oh my gosh, like, you like really this is the right copy? Like, and I had to like version check it just to make sure it was the right release and all this stuff. And so I ended up picking that up. You know, I mean, right now you're saying Mario Pika 6K, you know, 5.5K, whatever it may be. And it's like I got a Mewtwo from the 90s that there's only two PSA 10s up that 2K. And then, you know, I don't want to say too much, but like, you know, the core cards, like there's so many that are under, you know, 10 PSA 10s. I mean, you know, I thought I was paying pretty healthy on them, but when you give the example of like screen promos and Mario Pika, it's like that stuff's a steal, you know. And I know what I pay for that stuff, and I thought I was paying pretty fair. But like when you compare it to modern, like, I mean, it just that does not make sense.
Masaki sets also very undervalued. Gengar, I think, sits around like 10,000. One of the most popular species in the entire hobby is a Gengar. Those cards, out of the most likely during shipment, get damaged just based on how they're shipped to the winners, or not the winners, but the people who participated in the event. They're usually indented in the corners.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a layer of actually obtaining them. You just can't buy them, and the fact that they're so difficult to grade, 10,000 in comparison to all the modern day stuff. Personally, myself, it doesn't make any sense, that price point. So either the Japanese old backs are not high enough, or the modern day Japanese promos are too high. So you kind of just have to wager out. And I think if you've been watching us long enough, you probably have a good idea where we both sit on those types of those price points.
Yeah, I remember seeing a Masaki Gengar at 8.4K at auction. Like the auction was still live, and I was like, oh, they're finally getting some respect. Like my first thought was like, you know, that's a cool card. Like it's finally like actually like climbing up there. And because like you said, they're, you know, they have the issues of the release. They're beautiful cards. They're old back. They're super nice. And I mean, how many of those transacted in the 5 to 6, 700 range that were just nonstop like out there, and then now they're finally hopping up. And you know, when you give all the examples we've given and the comparisons of modern and vintage, this and that, like 10K is probably a pretty healthy price, you know, given where the hobby should go and all the comparables, this and that. Like it's, I mean, compared to like first hit base at 5K for some of the tens, like I'd probably buy first hit base, you know, just because. But it's at the same time, it's like I just don't see a world where a ton more tens pop up. I mean, like, yeah, there's a
No,
ton out there. I bought a lot of Masaki Alakazams in the 8-9 range. Not like a crazy amount, but if I see them, I think it's a deal. I pick them up because I prefer the Alakazam artwork. I really like how he's got the legs twisted and this and that. For whatever reason, it just feels like kind of a weird, cool artwork. But like, man, maybe we should have an episode where we just dive into old back stuff a little more.
yeah. Well, he's using double team in the background. I love the hollow on that Alakazam. It's a very interesting card because of how it works out with he's actually using an attack. All right. So next question coming in from Shug Nasty. You're the CEO of the Pokemon Company for a day. What do you change or introduce to Pokemon? I'm gonna go first. I'm gonna reiterate stuff that I've talked about. We're just gonna talk about the TCG, and especially on the English side. We just need to do more promotion stuff and focus a little bit less on just pushing as much product as we can in boxes as we can out there to the competitive scene, and just basically catering to the competitive market. Just throw some promos once in a while. Like, just, you don't even need to do anything new. Just copycat what the Japanese, the people in Japan do with their Japanese promos, because they do a nice mix of catering to the collectors as well as the competitive scene. And I think like the fact that this is another market thing, but we talked about like, because if you were to take a look at like the current, like the last two releases of boxes, Obsidian Flames, Paldea Evolved, and you're seeing like boxes being sold on eBay for about $30 less than MSRP. Obviously, we have distributor pricing, which is another, like that's also like another topic where we talk about how like how are brick and mortar how are brick and mortar card shops staying in business at this point when you have people on eBay selling for $30 below MSRP on modern day booster boxes. But anyways, that's another day. But yeah, to see like, I know a lot of people are eagerly awaiting the release of 151 to kind of like jump back into the hobby and bring it more interest back into it. But it's not a good thing when you see booster boxes in the hobby drop below the MSRP mark. It's not a great indication of the interest in the hobby. But currently, the Pokemon Company obviously is focused on just pushing as much product as they can out of the gate. But yeah, I would just work on the promo side and try to cater to collectors a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about like change for a day, I mean, like I could think of a lot of things that you'd like to improve on. I'd like to improve on like the Japanese, relationship with like the Pokemon organized play with Pokemon USA, like all of that. I feel like if they worked a little more closely together and they gave more freedom to like Pokemon USA and organized play and all that, like Tetra said earlier, the promos, like if we could just have exclusive like US promo releases. And like I get that you have like a Black Star promo set that comes out, and you have like the promo from Worlds, and you have like the promo for all the tins, and you have like all these different promos that come out. I wish that there were more like releases that like a Toys R Us release where there's a card for going to an event. I wish that there were more events and stuff like organized play, like Pokemon heavily focuses on like TCG and like the trading card game and like actually playing the game. I wish that like there were more ways to enjoy the hobby that like weren't just like focused on TCG, like at a card shop or like at a regionals or this or that. Like when you go to Worlds, it's like they had the drone show, they had the Pokemon park, they painted the little sewer cans, they had all these other ways to enjoy the hobby, the inflatables, they just there were so many other things that you could do. And I wish that there were more like Pokemon related events that were that allowed the casual collector or the casual like Pokemon enthusiast like be involved in. And like how those play out is kind of to be determined, this or that. Maybe it's just a big Pokemon parade or big Pokemon party like for a day that we plan for 6 months, that like when I'm CEO that day, like that's just the day, and then everybody gets a a promo pack or or something. I would just do something really cool, but cool artworks and stuff. I think what I'd like.
Coming in from Superjunk719, I have a few first edition base hollows that I want to send to PSA. Any tips on packaging, specifically how you would pack the box after putting the cards in the card savers? So I have packaged cards to be graded before, but you have probably packaged like 1,000 times
Yeah,
the cards that I've done my entire lifetime. So
I can take it if you want.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I think when you pack, you also you want to be safe, and you want to give like bubble wrap, and you put like a box inside of a box, usually good, and you want to make sure the box is like filled, so you don't want a lot of like dead space around. Like dead space in a box is actually pretty bad in my opinion. You want things to stay still. But I think that the one piece of advice I always like kind of hearing myself is like when I send a package to someone, they have to open it. Okay. They have to, go through it, pull the cards out safely. So I've gotten packages before where the cards in there, they're just taped, as can be. They got bubble wrap in there. And I've got scissors and a knife that I have to use to open this tape because they're using packing tape. And so like you don't want the risk to damage a card. So like a lot of like sometimes for PSA, if I would have like 10 orders in the past, like what I would do is I would put them in a Ziploc bag, because what if the box gets wet? You don't know how many times, probably 10% of the time I take a package to the post office, it's raining outside. And yeah, the package doesn't get soaked, but like when I'm carrying it in, because I hand it to the person, it might get a few drops on there. And so like I do put stuff in a Ziploc bag. But just keep in mind that the person opening it is going to have to actually get to your cards. So you want them to be able to cut the top, of the box. I think a larger box is probably a little bit more safe than a super small box. Sometimes I get a box with one card and it's a big box. It's like, well, why? But it's like, well, it's hard to lose a large box, you know what I mean? Versus like a little bulk mail or something. And then when you open it up, you could either have the cards in like your card saver box, like the 200 row thing, if you have that, if it's 200 card savers, or, if you have an old PSA box, which a lot of people have those kind of sitting around, you could just put it inside the PSA box. But the goal is you want to kind of have surrounded bubble wrap. You could put it in a Ziploc bag if you want. But I would just use ample bubble wrap. And when it comes to what packing material costs and all that, it really doesn't cost a whole lot compared to what you're about to pay for grading, what you're about to pay for shipping and all that. Like don't cheap out on the little things, like literally just use ample packing material. It's okay. Like eat the extra $5 to keep your cards mint and safe.
Do you still do the indexing tabs on the card savers? Oh, sorry, the sleeves.
I don't. Well,
You don't?
it depends. So I still have some cards I've like put in card savers back in like 2016. I just haven't graded because for Team Rocket commons and commons, I still do. But sometimes if I'm going through a collection and I have like 100 cards I want to grade, I'll just throw them in the card savers. And one thing I switched over the years I didn't really tell a lot of people is, excuse me, instead of using Ultra Pro card savers, which are a little smaller, it's hard to get the cards in, I switched to card saver. I don't know if it's ones or
Twos?
twos. It's the bigger one, or it's not the massive one, but they're bigger, and it's literally super easy to put a card in and take it out, and so and like it just the little stickies I don't think are necessary. And I talked to PSA and they made a reel about it like last year or something. It's like you don't need the sticky. So I think we may have kept Post-it note in business for a couple years, but sorry about that.
But yeah, you're right. The Ultra Pro semi ridges, they were very rigid. They were not flexible whatsoever. So it did
Yeah.
make a little bit sliding in the penny sleeve a little bit difficult. Definitely, I've only used card saver twos
Mhm.
when I've sent cards to get graded. I find that they are very open. They're very easy to open with the one hand.
I actually have these like these don't even have a label on it. One time, like 3 or 4 years ago, someone hit me up and they were like, "Hey, we're about to order some supplies from like China. Like, do you want to go in with us? We're gonna order 100,000 card savers." I was like, I'll go in with you, but man, that's a lot of card savers. And so I think it was me and a few other people. Like, I'm still like going through these card savers, and they were cheap, man, like cheapest I've ever bought, and they get the job done. But like, dude, that's a lot of card savers, man.
There was during the pandemic, like the during COVID, the price of card savers became exorbitant, just because there's so many people grading, and you literally could not find card savers anymore. Like, yeah, or people were just like charging an exorbitant amount. Because I remember when I was like asking Mason, because Mason's my middleman, so anytime I get cards shipped back from the US, they go through him first, and I was getting some cards back, so I was like, oh, by the way, I have some cards I want to grade. Could you throw me some card savers as well? Just because he's been cool about it before. It's like, no, those things, card savers are like gold right now. I cannot just give them away. But I think things have stabilized a little bit on the semi-rigid front. I'm pretty sure they're pretty readily available at this point now.
I had a comment with Rusty at one point, and he said, "Yeah, my most profitable item are my card savers. I make more money on card savers than I do any other card or anything." He's like, "If I could just sell card savers full time, like this would crush it."
That time is over unless we hit another pandemic. Once again,
to hear that from him was like kind of like surreal. I'm like, whoa! Like just to put it in perspective, it's like of everything you sell, like that's the number one item, like most
yeah.
profitable.
All right. So last question coming from Pokey Hood 6437. A lot of people are on the Poncho Pikachu boxes, but how do you feel about other Pokemon Center exclusives like the Kanazawa Pikachu box, Yokohama Pikachu box, the Tokyo DX box, as well as collectible investment pieces? So you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll do like a high level summary. Then if you want to hop in, that maybe we do that. Yes, they're cool. Yes, they're collectible. Yes, they're gonna do well long term. They're not going to do as well as the Poncho, which have already sort of taken off. They're not going to do as well as was the Festa Pikas, or like the screen promos, the Mario promos. Those just have other layers to them as far as like cross branding, just hitting it dead on with the full art, this or that. Like, yes, they are like exclusive things, and if maybe there's only one of them, like they do well. But like, these are kind of going through like a few iterations and a few different releases, this and that. And they are cool, they are collectible, but it's not like there's only one. Like there's a series of them, that are out there, and there's going to be more that'll come out eventually. So I do agree that they'll do well. I just wouldn't put them in the category as like Poncho or Mario, or like I just don't see them performing as strong as that over a long time frame. There's also a lot of them out there too, so I couldn't tell you supply versus all of them, but they seem to be very available.
I'm butchering this completely. How would you pronounce that? Kanazawa?
Yeah, that's pretty close. That's what I hear.
Kanazawa P. That's a very pretty card. It comes in a reverse foil as well, which is the premium one. I think that card sells for 400 last time I checked. I plan to buy one at some point as well, just because I think I really dig the art in that card, and I think it comes down to like don't the best performing cards in my collection are cards that like I bought just because I generally like the artwork on the card. And I think like so long as you're constantly doing that, like we've talked about this before, if you like the card and you want to purchase the card, there's a pretty good chance that someone else in the world is gonna also like the artwork on that card, unless you are just unless you have very unique taste in things. But yeah, buy what you like. Don't go in buying what you think that it's just gonna have a long term. No, well, not okay. Strike that. Take into account that sometimes you want to take into the long-term projections of a card, but if you buy what you like, regardless of what happens, you'll never be disappointed with what the final outcome is in terms of performance of that card.
I still think, back to, I was telling people when Latios came out, I was like, that's such a beautiful card. It's the heart. And I told my friends, like, dude, no way. Like, come on. It's like, it's not playable. Or yeah, someone said that. And then, years later, they're like, man, I should have bought those at release. Like, and it's like, if you like it, there's a good chance someone else likes it. We've talked about this a couple times in the podcast. Like, there's a reason you think it's cool. There's a reason it catches your eye. There's a reason that you're like drawn to it. And other people are going to feel that same way, whether they act on it or they have FOMO or they, or maybe just prioritizing other things is all different stories. But follow your gut, collect what you like. And, some of the best gains that some of us have made in the hobby has literally been by just keeping what we like and not selling out as things move up. So hopefully we're answering a few questions there, but
that Latios was very polarizing. I remember I was on Discord and like PFM, like he straight up said like it was a very poorly conceived card, just like in terms of like the artwork, on how they executed it. Like he understood like what they were going for in terms of the artwork, but he just didn't like how it was executed. Along the whole, a lot of people, enough people thought that it was executed well enough. Some people just I bought mine just because it was supposed to be like a cute gift for my wife. And I told this before, she literally kept it on her desk at work overnight and just left it there. And the janitor could have just like scooped it up if he wanted it to. But yeah, it's no longer on her desk at work. It's back at home because that's a couple $1,000 card now. So yeah,
it's crazy.
But yeah, buy what you like. Always buy what you like. And that is our final words and final advice for Next Gen TCG episode 11. Good episode. I know we didn't have a main topic, but we talked about a lot of market trend stuff, which we will catch up on once all these auctions ending. It's going to be a very exciting time for the hobby in the next couple of months, just to see all the stuff that we generally don't see pop up all at once. And some people, that's a good and bad thing. Sometimes you want to bank on something not popping up often in order to sell. So it'd be kind of interesting to monitor how much the market can absolutely bear in terms of all the stuff showing up all at once. So yeah, final thoughts, Zach?
I thought it was a good episode. It's hopping to market trends. We're getting the busy part of the hobby. So my main goal is just to stay consistent, find time each week to share some thoughts with you guys. And, the crazy part is we don't know what's going to happen in the next few months, but, we'll be here to kind of taking the feedback, here, let you guys know what we're hearing from the different sort of pools of different people. And if something crazy happens, we'll sit here and talk about it. So give us your comments and let's start some conversation, and happy to be here with you, man.
Happy to be here with you. Thanks, everyone. Thank you for watching. All right, so we also have a bonus question from Shug Nasty that's literally just directed to you, Zach. So his question is, Zach, how many beers to take home rattle in an Officer Jenny cosplay?
0. I don't drink and drive. I would just do that as is, man. If he wants to dress up as Officer Jenny, man, come on home to daddy, baby.